Hello, my name is Shelby Thomas, and this is my international issue speech on the War on Terror. Whenever I was 6 years old, it was the day before my birthday, and I was getting ready for school in my parents' bathroom, when all of a sudden my father frantically called for the rest of the family to come in and watch the news. I watched in confusion as I saw buildings on fire and smoke coming out of them. My family had just witnessed Al-Qaeda's attack on the World Trade Center. Shortly after, George W. Bush announced that America would not stand for this act of terrorism, and we began our involvement in the War on Terror. This is important to Americans because we should be involved in not only what's going on in America, but in the rest of the world, especially whenever it comes to wars. I've written several papers on this topic, and I've read a few books on the War on Terror. And the question that keeps being repeated is, even though America is such a world powerhouse, because of all the evil in the world, will there ever truly be an end to the War on Terror? In this speech, I will be discussing how we got involved in the War on Terror, some of the highlighted events, and then ask the question, can this war be won? So what exactly is the War on Terror? Well, New York Times writer Eric Schmidt defines it in his 2005 article, U.S. Officials Retool Slogan for Terror War, as the War on Terror refers to the military campaign that started after the September 11th attack. After these attacks, the U.S. led a coalition to destroy Al-Qaeda. So basically, the War on Terror began after September 11th. On February 14th, 2003, the George W. Bush administration released the official objectives for the War on Terror. First of all, we would defeat terrorists such as Osama bin Laden and anyone who supports them. We would deny sponsorship, support, and sanctuary for any terrorists. We would diminish the underlying conditions terrorists seek to exploit. And lastly, we would defend U.S. citizens and interests abroad and in our nation. Now that I've defined how we got into this war and what our plans were and our involvement, I will discuss some of the events that have taken place. Some of the major events in the beginning were less than a month after the attack, the U.S. troops invaded Afghanistan. 2 years later, President Bush launched an invasion into Iraq. Shortly after that, the Saddam Hussein statue was toppled. After the toppled statue, on December 13th in 2003, Operation Red Dawn took place, which was the mission to find Saddam Hussein, who had been in hiding. Shortly after that, Saddam Hussein was executed. And then more recently, under the administration of Obama, Osama bin Laden was located and killed. More recently in the news, we've been dealing with the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, also known as ISIS. This was originally founded by the protege of Osama bin Laden, who started this in 1999, and it was originally a part of Al-Qaeda. In 2006, they separated from Al-Qaeda, however, because of ideological differences. In 2014, CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate, who is the national security advisor in the George W. Bush administration, said that ISIS is not just a threat in Baghdad or in Syria, but should be a threat to the West because of ISIS's ability to recruit these fighters, train them, and then redeploy them into the West. Officials estimate that 5,000 foreign nations have flocked to ISIS. And in Derek Obadiah's 2014 article, ISIS Gruesome Muslim Death Toll, he reported that the UN concluded in the first 8 months of 2014, ISIS was responsible for 9,347 deaths. That's just in the first 8 months of 2014, and 4 of these deaths were Americans. Now, I'm aware that the events that I've highlighted are just it's just a fraction of what's taken place in the 14 years in our involvement of the War on Terror. However, I chose these events because after each one was completed, there was hope inspired in the people that maybe this war was nearing an end. After Osama bin Laden was killed, there was hope, but now we're dealing with ISIS. So the question is, will this war ever truly be over? Well, very recently, on March 24th, 2015, Gary Jaffe wrote in the Washington Post that Obama had announced that he vowed to end the war by pulling all the troops out of Afghanistan by the end of his presidency. However, this has been done before when President Bush pulled all of the troops out of Iraq in 2004 for. So the question still remains, even if the troops are pulled out, will that end the war? Well, in 2004, NBC's Today Show interviewed George W. Bush and asked him, can this war ever truly be won? His response was not a very popular one, but was brutally honest when he said, no, this is not a war that can be won. However, we can make it less popular for these people who are causing terror into the other people and make it to where they're unable to get their tools in the rest of the world. Now, one president says yes, this war will be over soon, and another president has reported that he doesn't think this war will ever be over. So what is the answer? The reality is that this war on terror is not a war that will be fought in a few battles. We've already defined what the war is, highlighted some of the events that have taken place, and now the question is, will this war be won? Unfortunately, there will always be evil in the world. There will always be people who are causing terror in other people's lives. However, as Americans, we can unite and have a zero tolerance for terrorism. We can say, we will not stand for this. In your families, you can be educated, and you can make sure that you're aware of what's going on in the rest of the world. The United States is taking the right steps in minimizing the strength of these terrorisms and maximizing the strength of America. Thank you.